All right, let's get started there. First of all, welcome to the webinar this evening as part of the Active SG Voyager online tennis program. I hope that all the players and the parents are enjoying the program that we're offering at the moment. So my name's Ryan Henry. I'm the host for tonight. I said the same thing last week. We've got special guests here, Luke Bourgeois, co-founder of Voyager Tennis. And basically, so this evening we're going to have a similar format to the last couple of weeks, where we're going to have a 20 to 30 minute conversation around a lot of Luke's experiences with Federer, and we'll open that up to questions at the end there as well. So we'll just go through a little bit of Luke's background. Well, first of all, Luke, welcome to the call, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Ryan. It's after tuning in for the last 4 episodes. It's been nice to be asked out here, so thank you.
Yeah, no, good stuff, mate. So just a little bit of on Luke's background there. So he's the director of high performance for the Voyager Tennis Academy in Australia. Former ATP professional player, so got to around 260 in singles and 170-ish in doubles. Former #1 junior in the world in doubles, and had a great experience traveling and training with Roger Federer on the ATP tour. So I guess that's where a lot of tonight is going to be focused on. I think with Federer being arguably the greatest player of all time, Luke's been super fortunate to be able to spend a lot of time with him and understand, I guess, a lot of the habits and the things that have made Roger so successful. So we're going to go into some of the detail around that. First of all, Luke, do you want to go into a little bit of a background on how you got the opportunity to spend a fair bit of time with Roger?
Yeah, exactly. So I was really fortunate that basically about 2 streets away, I grew up living from Tony Roche, that you can see there on screen. And Tony gave me a call. So I'd probably been working for about 5 years with a lot of the players like Pat Rafter and a lot of the great Australian players. And Tony gave me a call and said, I've got a client that's potentially coming into Sydney. He said, would you mind being his practice partner? So he goes, the only sort of thing you need to do is keep it to yourself. So without even asking who it was, I jumped at the opportunity. And so I was really fortunate that I had the opportunity there for our first training block. Got to hit Rog for about 10 days leading to the Australian summer. So it was a really good opportunity.
Yeah, nice, mate. And I think I know one of the observations that you sort of talked about, like when you were practicing and training with Roger, he was, if he wasn't #1 in the world around that time, the times he was, up among the best in the world, and certainly had a lot of slams behind him. You sort of talked about how he continually focuses on developing his game. He's obviously working with Roche as a coach to continually, get better. What were your observations around his mindset as to continual improvement?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. At that stage, he was #1 in the world. He'd won 10 Grand Slams. So it was something that really struck me, because even from the first session we did, it was something for me that I was really blown away, because there was Roger. I was so excited to be out on court, and he was the GOAT even at that time. And first thing we worked on literally for the first week was the split step. Something as simple as that, which I thought was just bizarre, because here I was again sort of top 250 player and out there, and I was really excited to see what he did. I just really couldn't believe it. Something as simple as that, and just seeing how he actually continually went over and over and over and just kept repeating the same thing. But it was amazing. Just something as simple and basic as the split step, which I hadn't worked on for years. He really took that to the absolute nth degree, and that was a real eye-opener, that how he really focused on those fundamentals and really made sure he got it right, because it was just, it was something so simple, but yet so important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the step is something that is often overlooked. And was there any other aspects of his game that he sort of, he really focused on? And what was he trying to do better, I guess, in the time that you spent with him? What was he trying to improve?
Yeah, at that point, it was really the rivalry with Rafa had started. And that's why he took on Tony as his coach. And it was interesting that he actually asked Tony the first time to coach him, and Roche said no. He basically turned him down because he wasn't Australian. And the fact that he kept coming back and asking him, but it was really around playing that attacking game style. So what he wanted to do was actually develop his all-court game even more so. And even at that point, he was winning Wimbledon from the baseline and really taking his game so he could take it to Rafa. and develop that. So that's why he did obviously reach out. And again, it was an area that he was constantly trying to refine and improve. And again, he did know, he was very clear, and he communicated and articulated it very well, is if you stand still, the game's just going to just keep catching up because everyone's improving. So he had that mindset that even though he was 10-time Grand Slam champion, he was going to continually just try to strive to get better in every area of the game.
Yeah, and I know, like, in terms of seeing, I saw some old footage of Federer playing. I think it would have been around 2002 or 2003 when he first started winning Grand Slams. He was a lot further back behind the baseline. He was a lot happier to rally. And it seems like now he's sort of moved up the court a lot. Seems like he's moved up maybe 1.5 meters or so. He's taking a lot more balls early. He's keeping the point shorter. And is that something that you saw, I guess, was a focus many years ago with Roche as well?
Yeah, he definitely did. And that was one thing I think he started to sense, that those guys were improving in that area, being a little bit younger than him. And he knew that he needed to start being more aggressive and started to develop that area, coming over that return, slicing less, and really starting to take time away from his opponents. So it definitely was. And one thing I'd say, it took him a little bit of time getting used to it. And it was almost when he started losing that dominance where he started to actually really implement it more. And I think when he found that it worked, that's where it obviously gave him confidence to really, again, implement it and make it a part of what we see today in the evolution of his game.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really interesting there. And I guess like Roger, changing tack a little bit there, I guess Roger is viewed as a player that has got a lot of talent. A lot of people would think are unsure whether he works super hard. I mean, I think when people see him at the Grand Slams, they see him sort of, tap a few balls around in the warm up, hit a few shots through the legs. It doesn't look like he's taking it really that seriously when he trains. But I think what you were saying is some of your experiences are very different from that. Is that right?
Most definitely. There was a myth, like there really was, like as you said, like, I mean, his preparation, his work ethic was unparalleled. Like it was, he would leave no stone unturned. Even for me, it was actually interesting. I was 27. I was top 7 in the country at that point. I was sort of, entrenched in the top 200 in dubs and top 300 in singles. And to hear him go through the way he periodized, the way he structured his year, like he's a meticulous planner. And with that as well, I mean, the work ethic was just amazing. And again, I say it's a myth. Everyone thought he didn't train that hard. The reality was the absolute opposite. I know the footage you see there that you've put on earlier is from 60 Minutes. The Australian 60 Minutes crew came out and did a story on that. And it was actually amazing because being in Dubai that was preparing for the US Open. I mean, we were having some of the biggest training days. Like on that day, I remember we took one of the days we took a thermometer out on court, and the thermometer maxed out at 60 degrees. So the on-court temperature was, we don't even know what it was. It was so hot. And preparing for that US Open, I mean, on one of those sessions, again, the air temperature was probably 40 plus degrees. Being in Singapore, it was actually much, much worse. It's the hottest conditions I've ever experienced. That 10 days of preparation, we culminated. We had a 4-hour session on court in the heat of the day. And it was, again, that was prepared for the US Open. And it was, I've never experienced anything like it ever again. Like I had all my 8 rackets lined up. We had to continually change rackets. We had to change shoes. We had to change everything, our socks, because it was just absolutely drenched. And that was the length that he went to there, because it was just about preparing for that US Open. And to be honest, that's where you sort of see it paid off. I mean, in that year he beat Agassi in the final, and in the end Agassi was known for his fitness. He actually ran over the top of it in the 4th set there. He beat Agassi in 4. He won 6-1 in the 4th. It was just one of those the absolute physicality he could bring was amazing. It was that work ethic. It was just unparalleled.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it shouldn't surprise a lot of people that there is a lot of hard work that goes into it. I mean, I think because he's such a good athlete, it makes it look like he does it very easily, but that's basically the backbone of it is, or the backstory is that he's clocked up 20,000 hours on court to get to where he has, and he works incredibly hard. So yeah, it's interesting to see that. And I know you've got a few observations as well around his mental toughness, because it does look like things come quite easily to him, but you've seen, you know, I guess the backstory of a few times that he's faced extreme adversity, and he seems to still push through it.
Yeah, it is that mental toughness. I mean, because you do, when you think of Roger, you think of the style, the grace, the class, the shot making, the talent, and all those sort of things, and he makes it look so easy. And it's interesting. It's almost like at times he doesn't even sweat. And I mean, yeah, and you obviously, I mean, you compare that to Rafa as well, who has the struggle, the intensity, and he's just, I mean, you can just see it. But for Roger as well, underneath that exterior, there's just I mean, there is. He's made of steel, and it's. I guess probably the standout story that I can think of is, I mean, everyone probably remembers the 2005 Australian Open, where he actually lost to Marat Safin in the semis. He lost to him 9-7 in the fifth, and it was one of the most titanic battles. And Safin ended up winning the Aussie Open that year. And anyway, Roger had match point in the fifth set, and he went back and went for a tweener, and it was literally just a great match. And I guess everyone knows about that, but one of the things that really blew me away about Roger was what they didn't know. Because in the quarterfinal match, again, he played Agassi, and they had a brutal match. It was one of the sort of brutal Melbourne days, and it was kind of strange because we finished and won the semi and won the quarter, and then getting ready for the semi, we had the off day in between, and we went out for a hit, and literally it was probably a 10-minute hit, and he just turned to me and goes, "No, I'm good. I'm good today. I'm feeling it." So I was just like, kidding me? Like, that's the shortest hit I've ever seen someone have to prepare for a semi, and didn't think anything more of it. Just see there was Roger with his confidence and that positive mindset that he always has. And anyway, so get ready again for the next match, and has a really light hit for the semi against Marat. And as I said, they had a titanic match, which he lost. So I went down to the locker room at the end of the match, and there I was, came up to Roger, and I was like, "Oh, tough one, mate." And he goes, "Have a look at this." And he called me over, showed me on the ground, he had a blood-soaked sock. It was just filled with blood. And then basically pulls up, shows me the bottom of his foot, and where the ball of your foot is, the entire pad of skin had been ripped off. And he'd literally played the entire match with that. It was, for us, it was a good, I mean, I don't know the size of this thing. It was just it was probably a half a centimetre thick. It had been ripped off, and he played that entire match without that. And it would have been just excruciating pain. I know what it's like to have a blister. You know what it's like to have a blister on your foot, to actually lose that part. And again, like, it was just amazing. All he said is, "I don't think I could have played the final." And again, that toughness just shone through, because the key thing there as well for me, which really blew me away, was you think about any other player. I mean, Djokovic pulled out of the semis of Wimbledon with a blister on his foot and told the world. Roger didn't tell a soul. He didn't tell a soul. He basically just played that match, did everything he could. And again, no excuses, had that toughness. And yeah, it was just amazing, because again, we all see the style and the grace, but what's behind that is he's an Iron Man. He's actually made of steel, and again, it just shows how stoic and how tough, because you don't get that good without having that resolve and that toughness.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I know you've sort of got some experiences around, I guess, the professionalism that Roger has as well. So the way he approaches, I guess, competition. So not only, I guess, what he does before matches, but what he does after matches as well to recover for the next day. I mean, we see a lot of junior players actually, you know, working pretty hard on the court. A lot of them train, you know, they're training their 10, 15 hours a week, doing everything they can. But when it comes to competition, we often see junior players, you know, eat poorly before matches, not warming up, not cooling down, just I guess, breaking some fundamentals of good tournament or competition preparation. What have you seen from Roger's point of view, the way he approaches the Grand Slams?
Yeah, it's actually again, there's so much to like, there's so much to love, there's so much to learn. And what sort of really, again, opened my eyes was it was, again, he played Roddick in the final of Wimbledon, and it was the one where he won in straight sets. But it was actually a long day. We started early, had a good warm up. It was a typical English summer's day that was rain interrupted. So it was a long, late finishing match. And again, after he won the final, did what he normally does, which was his 2-3 hours of press in multiple languages. Got back to the house in the village, and did all what he normally does, did all his signings, signed the balls, and we ended up going to the Champions Ball that night, which for me, I was actually ecstatic. He only had a small table of 6 guests, so it was amazing to get across there, and got to see all that with his entourage, and again, it was a late night. He did all the things he needed to do, and we ended up getting back to the house at about 2 a.m. And I was dead. I was beat. I was actually so tired, and it was amazing that I didn't even play. just sat there in the stands watching him win. And there we were, said, okay, I'm off to bed, going to bed. And there he was with Pavel, who at that time was his massage therapist, masseuse, and turns to Pavel and goes, Pavel, let's go. I need to do my stretching and I need to have a massage. And to me, I was just like, I couldn't believe it. I mean, he must have been exhausted. At that point too, he was actually heading back to Dubai to have a holiday with the family. And he wasn't playing again for about, I think, 3 or 4 weeks into the US summer. But there he was, still understanding the importance of his body. Just again, it blew me away. I mean, he's just won Wimbledon. You sort of think at that point, okay, I've got a holiday coming up. I've got a bit of time. But again, for him, with what he knows and what he does, that level of professionalism is just, it's amazing. I couldn't believe that there he was, and Pavel was just normal at the end of every day. And I guess that he knew what he needed to do for his body to give himself the best chance to recover and be ready to go when he needed it.
Yeah, that's right. You see that among the top level players. You see that a lot with Nadal as well, the meticulous sort of preparation around tournaments. And I think too, like it's almost something that I think a lot of players just miss or don't realize the importance of. I mean, everything you do as a player is geared towards how you compete on match day. And so many players, I guess, that we see, juniors in particular, just they sort of miss that point around how important it is to have good nutrition, warm up, cool down, recover, and spend your time wisely. You also have some good observations around, I guess, Roger and the way he's a student of the game. He knows a lot about the game. He knows, I think, everything about his opponents. He's given you some good advice before around different opponents that you've come up against that he's played. Yeah, what are your observations around that?
Yeah, it's without a doubt he lives and breathes tennis. Like you can see it. I mean, when he's playing the slams and you have the off night, I mean, he's in the hotel room watching the other players. He's actually seeing the other matches. And the level of knowledge that he gets from that. I mean, I remember one day we're in there and we're watching a match, and he just says, in 5 he's going to have a forehand volley winner, and I'm like, what? And I didn't really understand what he's saying. And then you realize 5 shots later, the player came in and hit a forehand volley winner, and I was like, no, that's impossible. And again, for him, it's the amount of tennis that he's watched, the way he's actually learnt the game, and you can see it. He actually sees it like a chess game. He sees it so many moves in advance, and that's where the only way to do it is to expose yourself to experience it. And it was just amazing, and that was just, you could see obviously the level of knowledge he has of the game. There's only one way to do that, which is to really embrace it and embody it and make it part of who you are. Because I mean, you touched on it there again, like with scouting. I qualified in Sydney one year, and I drew Carlos Moya. So I jumped on the phone and called up Roger and said, I'm playing Keys. He's like, who are you playing? I said, I'm playing Carlos. Because that's one thing as well about Roger. He actually, early on, he knew every result, whether it was futures level, challengers level, or tour level. He knew every result. He could actually tell you what a player was ranked, what they moved each week. And again, it's just talking about that idea of being a student in the game. But I remember I called him up, and I was at home in Sydney and qualified, I think, for my first or second time playing in Sydney and the tour event. And he goes, oh yeah, Carlos. He's like, really simple. He's actually quite easy to play. I'm thinking, yeah, maybe for you. But this is the way he described exactly what his strengths were, exactly what his weaknesses were. He actually almost coached me to win, because I actually almost got the chocolates, but unfortunately couldn't convert my match points and lost 6 in the third. But yeah, it's just, and that's where you start seeing it when you really know the game, when you really own like every element of trying to get the most out of it. That's when you really can achieve great things.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that can sometimes be the difference between, winning a match, I guess, but winning a match, 6-4, 7-6, and losing it the same scoreline as, I guess, just having the edge tactically over the opponent and having a good game plan. And what role do you think someone like Roche, Tony Roche, who spent a lot of time coaching Federer, what role do you think he had in sort of Federer's career, and what advice do you think he was giving him before he played matches, and any observations that you had from being an insider?
Yeah, I mean, Tony, obviously having been there himself, being a multiple Grand Slam champ as well, that was one thing where he does. Because I mean, to me as a coach, I look at it, we have 2 things that we can do. We can teach you how to hit the ball. We can teach you how to play the game. And that's what Tony can do, is he actually really, he really worked on strategies and patterns of play and tactics to use. against different players, and how you can execute your game styles on different surfaces. And that's, I guess, the luxury of Roger. He had a lot of artillery to use at different times, but the key experience there with a coach like that was to be able to really help you how to win. And again, sometimes the tactics were very, very basic and very, very simple. But when you know what's coming and when you know what to look for, and you can actually really have that game style that you just sort of look to go out there and execute, it can really be a huge advantage. Really can.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tony had a lot of different concepts to do against different players. I wouldn't know where to start with which player, but yeah, it was obviously something that he's been able to do very, very well.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And as well as that, I guess Roger's approach is, it's one of, when he plays a match, he's obviously out there, he's competing his hardest. He's an animal of a competitor. I think a lot of people probably don't realize. They think he is Mr. Nice Guy on the court, but he's as hungry as anyone. He's as Nadal would be to win. But also too, you've experienced, I guess, the fun side of Roger as well. So he has that. I guess he has that good ability to sort of flip the switch, right?
Yeah, I mean, just going back on the competitive side as well, it's a really interesting one because it's who he is. Like again, we were in Dubai for another training block, and I can tell you it wasn't even about tennis. We're playing squash, and I can tell you he's the ultimate competitor because when I got up in the fifth set, he wasn't happy, and he. As a competitor, took the advantage. I had the front of the court and he's rifled a ball in the middle of my back because he doesn't like losing. And it doesn't matter what it is because it really is such a big part of him. But I guess to answer the question there around what he does is one thing I've got to say and got to give him so much credit for is he actually does, he just stays in the moment. I mean, obviously he's super positive. Like I don't think I've ever heard him say a negative thing about anyone. He sees the best in everyone. Is obviously an ultimate respect, but there's no fear. But again, about enjoying the moment, there's so many stories, there's so many experiences of what he does because every day was literally a laugh. Like every day, whether it was training, whether it was match day, whether you're going to dinner, like he literally clowns around. And I know that's one of the things that people talk about him. He's quite childish. He's not. He's just enjoying it. And again, it was a Wimbledon final. It was one of the things that really jumped out at me because there we were. He's getting ready for the Wimbledon final in the seated players' locker room. And it was more of a distraction, but we're playing basically a hide and seek game. He was getting a wristband and hiding them in these little wallet lockers. And we're basically trying to see how many lockers you could open. And I'm just, again, going, he's about to play win. Why isn't he sitting in there in the corner? Why isn't he getting ready? And it was just, it was amazing because all of a sudden the locker room attendant said, Mr. Federer, it's time. And there he is, let's go. And then all of a sudden Roger's just there. He is walking out on court. And it was just, to me, it was one of those things again where you're like, he's playing like a game that I'll play with my 6-year-old son. And there he was walking out, and it was one of those moments again, where there's so many of those moments you sort of just really leave an impression. And at the end of the match too, sort of had a quiet moment, and I went up to him and I just basically said, hey, what's going on here? I was like, how? Because again, for me, I'm trying to learn as much as I can from him. It was such a great experience over those 3 years. I just said, how do you handle that? I mean, here you are, going out on court, you're playing in front of 15,000 people in front of a worldwide audience of 100 million people for millions of dollars. And it was a really interesting insight he gave me. He basically said, to him, it's really simple. And what he said is we've all dedicated our lives to this sport. And he goes, no matter the conditions, no matter the opponent, no matter how I'm feeling, he goes, I just want to prove that I'm better. And that's what he really does. And what he does so well there is enjoys that moment. And he's shown that time and time again. I mean, I mentioned the moment where against Safin, he had the huge hole in his foot. I mean, he's been carrying injuries. The amount of times too, he's been carrying a cold, and he just has this unbelievable love for the sport. He's got such a positive mindset and really has fun and enjoys the moment. And that's why you can really see he's still going strong after all these years. I mean, I can't believe it. He's been around for so long, but his fuel is his passion, it's in his love. And that's where you see it. When you have that foundation, that's when you can see you can really build some beautiful things. So that's one thing I'd love for parents to really understand is it is, and we have to find a way to really fuel that.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's a really good point that you want to have fun and enjoy the journey at the same time as work hard. So I think I mean I guess that's a lot of the areas that I think we sort of wanted to cover off some of the learnings there from Federer. I mean, I think it's probably a good chance now for parents, if you want to ask any questions to Luke about anything, or specifically around his experiences with Roger. I've got one question that's just popped up here. It says, how does he keep himself so focused and calm all the time? Any strategies that you've seen him use, like mindfulness or meditation, that you're aware of, Luke?
Yeah, it's actually interesting you say that, because you said, how does he keep himself so calm? The answer is he doesn't. He doesn't. Like, and that's one of the things I remember, again, asking about that, and we're talking about that concept, because I know everyone knows his reputation as a youngster is, he said that, at the Swiss Federation, he was actually basically booted off every single session as a sort of 14, 15-year-old. And the only person he actually hit with was Mercury, his wife. And he just said he got to a point where he realized that by showing them, he was giving power, and what he talked about, giving power and points to his opponents. So one of the key things there is there still is that fire, there still is that resolve that's bubbling underneath. But what he decided to do was he chose not to show it. And that's where the more he started to do that, obviously he actually created that ability to stay calm, and really find that way. But there still moments where you'll see him sort of lose it a little bit. But again, the big thing for him, you see what he does and does so well. It's the way he takes his time, the way he breathes, and he does do a lot of breathing techniques that he uses in between points. But again, it's that you got to understand that there still is that fire bubbling underneath. He just chooses not to show it.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Another question just come in here is on data. So how much or little of data is important to you, and what is the key regarding your next opponent? So maybe there, I mean, I guess Craig, going into some of the Craig O'Shaughnessy kind of stuff on the data of the game, I think that'd be a good time to go into it now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge believer in it. I really am. It's again, we're creatures of habit. And so when you actually know what an opponent's thinking, or if you can actually start seeing plays before they happen, and I mentioned that about Roger, like he sees it before it happens. So if you can grab any of that data that can help, I mean, it's a really big thing. And I don't know if it's the right analogy here if some of the kids are quite young, but I look at the simple thing of why casinos always win. Because the reason there is every game they play, the odds are stacked in their favor. And when you can arm yourself with that data and know what wins and what works and what doesn't, ultimately that's where you can really back yourself. And again, I guess talking about Roger, he's really process driven. If you can actually understand that this is your process, this is what works well, and if you can back yourself, it actually really helps executing under pressure. You'll know ultimately on the day it's about execution. So that's where I feel like, again, if you know you're doing the right things, it really helps you commit. So again, it's something I think it's changed coaching. It really has. It's changed coaching so much. So any way you can actually use that information, because I know personally I do, and it's massive.
Yeah, and I think too, just reiterating that point, just as far as like some of the key stats on Federer, I think, you know, he serves and plays a first ball forehand an incredibly high percentage of the time. It's like 80% plus. You know, he wins, I think, 90% of his service games. As far as the stats on the Pro Tour, I think about 50% of serves hit are wide, 25% are body, 25% tee. There's all those key things, I guess, that you want to know, I guess, to stack the odds, as Luke's saying, in your favor. And the biggest stat of all, which we all talk about regularly at the academy, is the first four shots are where the games are won and lost. So that's the serve and return, and then the first shots that are played by each opponent. So yeah, certainly there's certainly some really good stuff on stats. If you are looking to find out more, there's a brilliant a guy who's in Djokovic's corner right now, Craig O'Shaughnessy, has done a huge amount of research on not only the ATP and WTA tour, but junior tennis, all levels of tennis right the way through to juniors. So if you want to find out what the stats are and what to do, it's Craig O'Shaughnessy, The Brain Game, is a great place, great resource, which we've spent a lot of time on. All right, I got another question here. What have we got here? So he was injured against Djokovic this Australia, but how is he able to still play so well? How does he recover so quickly from his 5-set matches?
Yeah, again, with the recovery, we sort of touched on that before, where he does everything. The way he eats, I mean, the way he times his meals, the way he actually takes care of his body. He's the ultimate professional. I think one thing as well is we all hold stress. He does do an amazing job to actually stay relaxed, and that's been one of the key things to be injury free. And that's one of the key things there, where he doesn't generally get as much probably stiffness and soreness as a lot of the other players, because stress is a really big factor. But yeah, I wish I had that answer as well of how he does it and does it so well. But from the perspective of when he plays with his injuries, it just does. I mean, for him, just one of his key beliefs is he doesn't want to default from matches. So he's always has that ability to find that next level. Again, you talked about Djokovic. I think the match against Tennis Sangren was the one that for me, where he found a way to really just battle back from a couple of sets down and hang tough. But yeah, part of it is that mindset in the ability to really dig deep. And again, for me, the way he actually takes care of his body, again, it just shows what you can do when you actually make the right decisions from your nutrition, and make the right decisions from your recovery and your rehab. And again, having that sort of mental strength to actually push through, because it is, I mean, again, not just that match. For me, I've probably seen him in 6 or 7 matches when he's had a cold, and he's managed to actually find a way through that match when he's not 100%. And in those, he actually went on to win the slam a bunch of times. So it just shows what the power of the mind can really do.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's good. And we've got another question coming in here, just around. So Peter Carter was noted to have a great influence on Roger mentally when he was younger. I guess who helped him in that space as he got older?
Yeah, he obviously had some different mentors. I think a key thing there as well is not to forget is actually his parents. It really is early on. They actually laid the foundation. I remember catching up with Lynette, and we were talking about it. Now as a coach, I had obviously a different sort of way of thinking, and we're talking about a lot of the things that we see in Australia. I know it's the same in Singapore, and again in Switzerland, we're having a conversation, and she spoke about some of the things that she did. Again, as Roger's a 12-year-old, one of the things she said to him is if you want this, you've got to drive it. And she basically, she coached tennis as well, and she had hours, and he had to get from school. And she basically explained to me when he was 12 that the first week she basically met him at school, came back home, got on his bike, and she rode him to the tennis courts. And she said across the way, there's probably 3 intersections where probably a fair bit of traffic. And she said, Roger, if you want to do this, you've got to do it yourself. And she actually basically from there left it up to him. So that was probably a real key thing there, is he is a really independent thinker. He does think for himself, but he's also surrounded himself with some really, really astute people. So that's where he has had some great mentors along the way that have made a really big impact. I mean, from Paul Annacone, who's obviously a big one. He's always had Severin Luthi, who he basically had installed as the Swiss Davis Cup coach. I mean, he's always surrounded himself with those people and really been open to advice, but ultimately made his own decisions. And it's been one of the key things as well, is he's very, very strong-willed and very, very wise. But that's something that I've seen that really stuck out.
Yeah, definitely. And just to also reiterate part of Gary's question there, which is, what did he do in this area? Because like I think we've all heard the same thing. When Roger was younger, he used to break a huge amount of rackets. And I think it was around the time that I think Peter might have passed away that a lot of it changed. But how do you, I guess it's quite amazing that someone can go from someone who had serious kind of psychological, I guess, anger issues when he was sort of maybe 17. And then by the time he was 19, 20, he was almost completely different. Do you know much into the background around how he went through that transformation?
To be honest, no. I know the death of Peter was a big one. It really was. That was what really sort of got him to think differently and start seeing things differently and start understanding the opportunity that we have. And life is quite short, so there was definitely something in there. But again, I'm not sure if he did sort of seek professional help, but I think a big part from what I did know was around that incident.
Yeah, it must have changed his perspective a lot.
Yeah.
At that point, I've heard the same thing. And it looks like we've got the last question here is has his routines changed as he's got older? So I guess the way we could interpret that, routines, the way he prepares for tournaments, the way he trains.
Yeah.
Even?
Yeah. Again, his periodization, when you look at it, which for me is, again, talking about his professionalism, he was so clear in what he needed, the hours on court. As he's gotten older and he understands that he needs to take care of his body, he really does get it right. So that's where you can see he's cut back on his schedule, like obviously playing far fewer events. I mean, skipping the French as he's done like the last few years. I mean, he really has his hours on court. I mean, right now he's at a point where it is about being an ideal performance state for each match. So that's where a lot of that preparation has changed. I mean, his body, he's used to the hours. If he does train too hard, that's where he does pull up sore, he does pull up stiff. So it really has changed. And that's, again, sort of credit to him is Pierre, who's been his longtime trainer, is a magician. And he really helps in all those areas to make sure that he's preparing himself best for each event. And that's where it definitely has changed. And it's really reduced. But again, the key thing is making sure you're getting the hours in early in those formative years. And then once you do have those hours, it's obviously being able to maintain it. And again, using the right times to really try to get your gains. And then that's one thing he does is he maintains quite well, really well. And now it totally has changed.
Yeah. Yeah, nice, mate. Well, it's been great having you on the call, mate. I think it's been really insightful to learn a lot about, I guess Federer's habits and background and experiences that you've had with him. I think if I can just take maybe 3 things away that parents and players, I guess, can implement in this. I think the first thing is just around work ethic. You know, I think Roger has obviously done that incredibly well, that he's worked incredibly hard, I guess, to get to where he has, despite the appearance that it might seem that he's talented. He's definitely done his 20,000 hours on the court. The second thing is just to continually look at improving. I mean, if you've got as Luke sort of mentioned before, you've got a player that's number 1 in the world, won 10 Grand Slams, and is constantly looking to become a better player. Everyone should be taking that approach. And the third note that I had written down there is just to become a student of the game. You know, so to study your opponents, know the history of the game. And know a lot about tennis, because the more you know about the game, the more likely you're going to be able to use, I guess, some information to help you win a tough match or a really important match. So thanks again, mate. I really appreciate you coming on the call tonight. And just to let everybody know about next week, we've got a special guest. It's actually Ash Barty, Ash Barty's father. Who's going to come on the line. Ash is currently the world number 1 female tennis player. So I think that we're going to find some really interesting, probably parallels to the way Roger's parents sort of did a lot of their parenting. Rob's going to talk through, I guess, his approach that he took with Ash to, I guess, help her become, an incredible tennis player who's, number 1 in the world right now, but also a great individual as well. Ash is a standout sort of character on the WTA tour, sets the example for how to behave, and I think a lot of the parenting and the things that he's going to be talking about are going to be really valuable for parents next week. So same time next week, 6 o'clock Singapore time. We look forward to having everyone on the call for that. And thanks again, Luke.
Thanks, Ron. Pleasure.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Good night.